Back on the Sports Complex here on a Wednesday afternoon. On the show today, we'll talk some more Texas football as we start to get ready for Big 12 conference play. What the Big 12 conference means this year, what the challenges of playing the Big 12 conference and Baylor and all of that. We'll get into that. We'll start getting into this week's game. We'll get into that today. We will get into some more NFL talk, a little bit more about the Cowboys. Dan Quinn spoke to me the other day. I was listening to that today, found some good stuff in there. The craziness that's happening with the Bears and some of these other teams that are having some issues with coaching. We'll get into that as well. Talk about the best 0-2 teams, the worst 2-0 teams. And, of course, getting into all of your text, 512-337-3776, 512-337-3776. You guys drive the show. So whatever you guys want to talk about, we'll keep talking about here on the Sports Complex. Of course, a bunch of day games that are happening. It is not Mango Fish Trap. That is the Heebie-Jeebies. Good call, though. Good pull there. I like it. Like someone who likes Austin music out there. That is the Heebie-Jeebies, though, which is now the ADH Project. Eddie Hernandez doing that. So you can check out what they're doing now, ADH Project. The intro music, the Heebie-Jeebies, though. The baseball did happen earlier. We'll get into that a little bit later. But all your baseball games have already happened in the AL West. All the games we care about, if you're an Astros or a Rangers fan, all of those have already happened. So we'll talk a little MLB, too, if we get time to get there. But it is time to talk a little bit more about Texas football as we get into the reality of playing Big 12 conference football, playing a Baylor team, getting to the point of you had 3 games. Of course, you had the huge Alabama game, week 2. That you were really trying to be on point. Everything was you need to win that game. That was, as Sark put it, a benchmark game. It's a game that you're really trying to make sure you're in the right place as a team, that you can progress and where your goals need to be for this season. And the way you played against Alabama at Tuscaloosa, that's a big difference too. You went to Tuscaloosa. You were able to play a big road game and come out where, you were able to quiet a crowd that does not get quieted very often. All of those things are positives that you're able to say, okay, now as we go into it, we know we're playing in all hostile conditions. Every road game Texas goes to, the stadiums are going to be smaller, but the crowds are going to be vicious. They do not like Texas, and they do not like Texas a lot more now because of whatever reason. And look, I've long been the Texas fan to try and talk reason into people about that it's not about wins and losses, it's about money, and it's always been about money. And you can't compete with the money, so why are we having this discussion? I'm not saying that our team's better than yours. I'm saying that we make more money, and that's what people wanted. That's what this is all based on. So it's not a world where it's, everything's fair. So I get it. Baylor may have had a better team. I don't think they do this year, but in the past years they may have. But you're not going to bring in the revenue share, which is why TV companies don't care about you as much. It's why there's Longhorn Network. Because you guys everybody wanted a clean, even split of a network that only Longhorn fans are going to pay for. So that's why it is what it is. But that not being said, that withstanding, whatever. Getting into going to these games, trying to get yourself set up to where you need to be, there is still improvements that need to be made. We've talked about K-State losing the game to Missouri. K-State is a team that you've seen over the past few years, been a team that has progressed throughout the season, not regressed. And Texas, to an extent, has not regressed wholly throughout a season, but we've seen pieces of Texas start to fall apart. We've seen play calling start to get a little too predictable and then too erratic. So, you get into where every defense knows what Sark is doing, and then when he figures out that they know what he's doing, he then switches it up too much, that he's throwing the ball too much, too many deep balls, too much trying to make hero ball, which you don't want to do if you're Texas. You don't want to get into hero ball if you're a team that needs to be in the lead. If you're front running great right now. You're doing great in the front run. So good with that. So you need to figure out with Texas, what are the things we still need to improve upon? And you've seen glimpses. We saw glimpses of the deep ball game, of the deep balls that Quinn can throw against Alabama. Now you're going to see more 3-high looks, more things that are going to make it more difficult to get those kind of looks. You have to build in your balance of your game and build in that Jonathan Brooks, CJ Baxter, when he comes back. I think he's starting to feel better. We'll hear more from Sark tomorrow, where CJ Baxter is in his recovery, if he's going to be ready to go. But you need to build up get that run game flowing the way it is in the fourth quarter a little bit earlier. It may not be in the first couple drives. It may take it a little bit of time for your O-line to start winning those battles, but you need to establish that run game a little bit earlier in the first half to make that defense make the adjustments and come up. You need to be able to find more passing in the intermediate. It's difficult. Those throws are pretty hard. We see a lot of quarterbacks. There's issues of, Dak Prescott has trouble reading safeties. Some quarterbacks have trouble reading linebackers. And when you get in that intermediate, a linebacker may be just sitting in the space. A safety may be sitting in the space. So I get there's issues. But if you want to be a team the goal is where we want to go, where Texas wants to go, you need to figure out your passing game struggles. So if we want to say one of the things you need to build on is it's great that the running game's there. I gave you numbers in the NFL yesterday, and we can talk about them again. That teams that have run the ball more than they passed it in the first 2 weeks are 16-1. They're 16-1. Doesn't mean everything. You still have to throw the ball. If you don't have a pass game, your run game's not going to be there. Because we've seen that with Carolina, and we've seen that with Houston, that they're throwing the ball enough, but everyone's still focusing on the run game. You've got to have both. You have to have both. There has to be balance. But the passing game has to get going, so you want to be able to draw that running game early because everybody's going to set out, if you're playing against Texas, to stop the pass. Everybody knows until Sark changes his MO, everyone's going to keep trying to go out and stop the pass. So you have to go out and try and run the ball early. Run the ball early against Baylor and open up that passing game as opposed to what Sark appreciates doing. What Sark's favorite thing to do is get some early outside passes, not even deep passes, but get, screen passes, little short passes to the outside, kind of get Quinn Ewers in a rhythm early, which is great, but not necessarily letting his offensive line start to dominate where I think they should be able to dominate in Baylor. Here's Sark on Monday talking about the passing game struggles and where they need to start working to figure this stuff out going forward. You have a full season to really get to where you need to be, but you need to start figuring out your passing game struggles.
I think just every aspect of the passing game needs to improve. We felt like we weren't as sharp. We had a protection breakdown in there. Didn't have the best play calls predicated on what the coverages were. I think Quinn could have probably made a couple throws that he normally would make. So everybody kind of took their turn. And that's not to make excuses. We all have to be better. And that, again, you think passing game, you think play call, and you think quarterback. And most notably, both of us need to be better. But I think everybody else needs to be better as well. And so we all got to take responsibility of that. And we're going to need our passing game, as we know. And so, again, I'm not going to let one game kind of knock me off my rocker on this one. We were really good throwing the ball for 2 weeks, especially in week 2. It wasn't as clean as we wanted to. The lucky part for us, we have a run game that we can lean in on, a defense that we can count on, and special teams. But we'll get that fixed, and we'll go out and play much better in the passing game this week.
And so we know Sark is going to go out and try and pass the ball again. But you have to set up that run, get that run set, and depending on what Baylor is going to give you. We assume Baylor is going to try and stop the deep ball. We assume they're going to try and confuse Quinn Ewers because it's your best shot to win. And if you're going to load up in the box, and we saw Wyoming did it. Wyoming looked at the Rice tapes. Wyoming did it as well. Wyoming's a great run defense, and they decided to forgo the run defense to try and mess with Sark and Quinn Ewers. So we can assume that Baylor's going to do it too. They may not. They may change up everything. They may just try and blitz the quarterback, run stop, and just have a great front seven and let Quinn Ewers try and beat him man-to-man, which if I wouldn't do. That's not something I would do. Quinn is a good enough quarterback. He can beat a lot of teams man-to-man. So you want to put different views out there. You want to give him different looks so that he's going to have a little bit more problems. But on those, there's 2 parts of this game that we're going to play sounds of that are kind of the big things for Texas, and it's slow starts and it's early downs. So this is when you get out there and when getting the crowd, getting the fans, getting the team, getting everybody on the same page. On home games, you got to get the fans out there. On away games, you have to be able to say the fans are going to be going crazy on the other team. We have to then step up. We have to not have pre-snap penalties early in these downs that are going to push us back. Slow starts have been a thing for Sark. And he has really good scripts. In the past, we've talked about how good his opening scripts have been. But even in those opening scripts that we all liked, Usually that first series wasn't great. It always seems to be a feeling out process for him. He seems to be throwing some things at the wall, hoping that the team will be able to come through, and it doesn't always work. But once you have that first one, and we saw against Alabama what he did, was he played really a high percentage stuff early. It was able to work. They didn't get a ton of plays off, but they were able to see the ball go into the hands. They were able to see progress against an Alabama defense. I think you want to see that kind of thing against Baylor. Here's Sark talking about the slow starts, what you got to do to start fixing them.
Some of it is we just haven't finished some drives. We've had pretty good drives early in the games, and we've gotten ourselves into the red area, and we haven't finished those drives. Most notably, you think about the Alabama game, we were moving it. We just weren't punching it in the end zone. And so finishing those drives, I think, is important. The other night, that second drive was a 90-yard drive that it just took us a while. I think that's the part that sometimes frustrates us too, because we're so used to kind of getting yards in chunks and punching it in that sometimes when you have to be a little bit more methodical, there's nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't feel disappointed going 90 yards and scoring a touchdown. But in the end, it's owning the openers and owning our game plan. And, again, we have a veteran team that really tries to do what we ask of them to do on the offensive side of the ball. And, again, we've placed a lot of emphasis on finishing in the fourth quarter and making adjustments. I got to make sure we got to swing that pendulum back a little bit of owning these openers and starting the way we're capable of starting.
And that's what you say, starting the way you're capable of starting. And also in this, he talks about the 90-yard drives and how it's kind of slow and meticulous, and you get there. You got to embrace that early in these games because you're taking the fans out early. You're especially on road games. The more you can just slow it down and take it. I know you want to play up tempo. You want to go out there and express the things that you can do. And you may need to do it. You may need a switch. I don't think that opening drive is necessarily the one that you need to go out there and get after. Because once you get in that opening drive, the players aren't necessarily on the field going to figure out and make the adjustments in game on the first drive while they're still out there. The coaches are going to be trying to make it. They're going to be trying to put it in. But it's a little bit harder to do on that first drive. Now, once you get in the second, now when you can start to go tempo, now when you can throw some different looks at them, it can help out a little bit more. But going in that first series, that's slow. You just need to get the ball and start moving it down the field. It's not the exciting. It's not the most fun. It's not the sexy. But we don't need to be sexy this year. Sexy is winning. Everybody knows that. And I know the recruits, you've got them on and getting these wide receivers, getting the quarterbacks, getting everybody else. That's the Sark game plan and what he does. And if you play super boring, you're playing Jimbo Fisher, you don't want to do that either. You don't want to go full the other route. You can do interesting things running it and throwing it and creating different protections. But what you want to do is what you want to end up doing is starting off these games, getting them a little bit easier for you, getting a little bit easier of a head start instead of trying to get that chunk yardage in those first couple of plays when something doesn't go wrong, just kind of accepting it and moving slowly a little bit to start these games. Because I feel it's been a problem for Sark is he gets ahead of himself a little bit that he expects play one to work. And when play one doesn't necessarily work, 2 and 3 are already set up that only work if play one works. A little bit more flexibility in that opening script, at least for that first drive, because once he gets in that second drive, he's usually really good. And it's been not great on week 3, especially week 1 wasn't great either. But usually once he gets going, that second drive starts to look a little bit better. Having a little bit more flexibility in that opening drive, and especially early down efficiency. That is going to be a huge factor as Texas continues on this season, is early down efficiency. Is Texas going to be able to get into positions where Sark's playbook opens up? Because we talk about third down, we don't have third and longs. But a 2nd and 5, a second and, or if a 2nd and 5 and anything less than 5 really opens up your playbook. That you are now able to get into that, and especially now that Sark is more into 4-down territory, and he is more into a 4-down coach, that he's open to it. He hasn't had great results so far, but he's more open to it. Here's Sark talking about early down efficiency and its importance.
Well, I think, one, we're a better team when we're really efficient on first down. And that's probably true for everybody. I don't know. But when we're good on first down, generally, we almost avoid third downs because first, second down. But also, when you win on first down, it gives you much more manageable third downs to win with. And when we get ourselves in trouble is when we put ourselves in third and long situations. And right now, that's just not quite a strength of ours. We need to get it to become a strength of ours, but we're not quite there yet. So we need to be really efficient on early downs. And when we can create some momentum that way, and we can really start sequencing plays in a manner to where the guys understand what's coming next and what's coming next. And so, again, that's why our base game plan is so important to us, and the guys understand it and understand our openers. I touched on it the other night. We're so proud of what we're doing in the fourth quarter right now, and from where we were the last 2 years, it's great. But man, we got to get back to being a really good team that starts fast and starts well and owns that game plan, which is something that was kind of a trademark of ours for the first couple of years. So that's going to be a big point of emphasis this week of make sure we get back to owning the game plan and being efficient earlier in the game and not having to wait till the fourth quarter.
And that early down efficiency, that's really what it is. And I think part of this goes to Sark, that if you're calling pass plays, even quick out pass plays, something like that, make sure Quinn has a couple of options to get the ball out quickly, to get the ball out and get a couple yards, but make sure it's a completion. Make sure if the defense, comes out and as soon as he snaps the ball, the defense shifts into something he's not expecting to see it because the defense is showing him something he read incorrectly. He's still a young player. That he has another side. If he can look to the other side and say, okay, I got an out. I got, C.J. Baxter on the other side and kick two. Or J.T. Sanders bust out on the other side. So this was supposed to go to X-Man, but I got J.T. Sanders on the other side, and I can kind of find him. Or I got a slant route with J-Witt or something where I can just get 4 or 5 yards. I don't need a ton. So even if the 8-yard route isn't working, give me that 4-yard route. And I know it kind of bunches up. I know all those things. And Sark knows all this. Believe me, he knows all this. But it's a question of, can you get the plays early, set up in a way that the game plan is achievable, as much as he says sticking to it. You don't want to force it because one of the things Quinn Ewers has done very well this year is not turn the ball over. You want to continue that trend, especially as you get into Big 12 play, and especially as we get into the world where we know what Big 12 play is going to be this year. I'm not saying that it's going to be outlandish, as some people have claimed. This is the all gas, no excuses year. So I'm not going to come out and say it anyway that I think that it's going to be an extra emphasis more than it was last year. I think holding calls are going to be, a little bit lighter. Think it's going to be, pass interference or, defensive holding. You can get away with a little bit more. I don't think they're going to call a bunch of penalties on us that are unearned. And I don't think they're going to, not call penalties that are very outlandish on the other team. But I think those little borderline ones the majority of them may not go. So maybe 60%, 40%. But you got to be able to play through that. Because the Big 12's been struggling. This isn't a Big 12 year where we walk out and say it's a gauntlet and, oh man, how good are all these we can beat all these Big 12 teams. Rice beat one, Wyoming beat one. We can beat all of them. But Texas needs to understand how to play through. Sark did talk about the Big 12 struggles. And if he was able to see, how these teams are, having issues this year, if it changes your viewpoint of the Big 12. Because, as much as you want to complain, hey, we think that Brett Yormark's out for us. We know the refs may not have our back, and, it could be an uphill battle. The same part, you can't pick a better year for Texas to be at the point where they're at in the Big 12. You can't pick a better year to have an uphill battle against the Big 12 because they have been struggling. Here's Sark when he was asked about how much of the Big 12 struggles he's seen. He hasn't seen all of them, but he's seen some.
I haven't had a chance enough to watch everybody. I see the scores. But I haven't had a chance enough to watch, the reasoning behind it. Obviously, I think we found out, Wyoming's a pretty good team. So I get an understanding of the Tech game there, of what that looks like. But what's happening in the Big 12, I don't know. I know we got good coaches and there's good players and tough environments to play in. And, I think sometimes we assume certain teams are supposed to be good. But, I look up, I know Kansas is 3-0. So, I know Kansas State, I did catch a glimpse of that. That was a tough loss on the road against an SEC team on a 61-yard field goal. So, at the end, we know we're going to get everybody's best shot. But we'll have to analyze each team as we go, as the closer we get to them.
You're going to get everybody's best shot. But that best shot is different than it has been in different years. You're not playing TCU last year that was playing at a different level. K-State even looks like they're not at the same level they were at last year. Oklahoma's going to be there. Oklahoma's going to put up a fight, but we don't know really what Oklahoma is. That SMU score is somewhat deceiving. That was a much closer game. That's the only game they played against a reasonable opponent. So we haven't seen them against somebody that's a better opponent. So we don't know a ton about Oklahoma yet. We know Kansas is 3-0. We know they played pretty well. But are they going to be world beaters? Are we now at the point that Kansas is the biggest threat to Texas? Besides Oklahoma? Are we at that point? So this is the year. This is the year. And I get you're going to go out against it. But you just went to Tuscaloosa. And as much as you want to, naysay whatever about Alabama and their team and their ability, they got better players than anyone in the Big 12 does, the player-wise. Now, they may not have the best game plan. They may have not had, the best quarterback. They may not have had some other things. But overall talent on a roster, that any Big 12 team would basically shift their roster for that roster, and any coach would do it in a heartbeat because they know the talent that's on that team. And you're in a bigger arena, a bigger stadium. Bryant-Denny Stadium is bigger than DKR. Holds more people than DKR, only by 1,000 or so, but it does hold more. Its capacity is more. So if we're going to say the capacity of you're playing in a DKR in SEC country, or you're going to go play in a smaller place, it'll be loud. It'll be great. The atmosphere in Waco is going to be great. We know what the atmosphere is going to be. It's going to be ready for college football. But the Big 12 environment this year is yours for the taking as long as you don't make excuses. As long as you don't allow excuses to stockpile. As long as a non-called holding doesn't make you not rush the passer. As long as you don't compound things into false starts and penalties on yourself. As long as you don't get in your own head, you'll be fine. And as long as you don't let the fans get in your head. Sark talked about the Big 12 environment this year and understanding what you're walking into week in and week out and what it's going to be playing in the Big 12 this year.
Well, I think we just need to understand what we're walking into. We're going to go into Baylor here Saturday night on the road. It's been well documented that as of right now, the last time we're going to play Baylor, last time we're going to go there. And so we understand the environment we're walking into, and we can't be fearful of that. We have to embrace it. We gotta walk in there and be ourselves and play our brand of football, but understand what we're going into. And so, I do think that's part of it. I do think, as a lot of these games and historical games are going to come to a close this season, now more than ever are their horns down, right? Now more than ever are there, who cares about Texas? Let's take one more shot at them on the way out. And so we can't sit here and be a punching bag. We got to walk in there and we have to be in attack mode. And we have to make sure that, we're built for the environment. And I think we've proven that to ourselves now over kind of the last couple of road games that we've had, and no more than going to Alabama and embracing that environment. So we're going to have to do the same Saturday night.
Yeah, you have to embrace it. Again, you're the win. You're the team. You're the favorite every week. This isn't, and you can say it's uphill because of the refs, but it's not. You can say it's uphill because your last year and people are coming at you, but it's not. It's not really any different than a lot of other years. Because you know what? In other years, a lot of those refs still didn't like you. A lot of those refs were still not fans of Texas or Oklahoma. They weren't fans knowing that these schools were spending more money. They weren't necessarily fans of that. Some of them may have been, and those guys will still be. So you just have to understand, I don't think the refs are going to be as big of a factor as they've been in the past. I think last year we saw what it's going to be. The main thing you're going to see is they're going to call less holds on other teams. That, I think, is going to be your main concern, is borderline calls that are borderline for every team are going to stay a little bit more on the side of not being called. But that's okay. Embrace it. Embrace all of that. Understand that everything you do means more now, because if you can go through and say, well, I know I'm getting held and I still got 2 sacks in a game, it means more. Embrace it. Embrace it, the horns down, because they want to play you again, because they need you. Embrace all of that, and you'll be just fine. It's Texas' year to do it, and we'll see what they come out and look like early in possessions, early in the start, all those things we'll see. But this is a long season, and you have to keep progressing throughout it. Beating Baylor isn't the end. Beating Alabama wasn't the end. Getting through 3-0 for the first time since 2012 definitely wasn't the end. We've said we know that team lost 4 or 5 games, 2012. So it doesn't matter. It'll get us to Patrick's Big Fat Poll today.
Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day on the Horn.
Poll of the day today. Join the conversation. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line. Join the conversation. Poll of the day. Texas still needs to improve some things. Texas still needs to work. There's still some factors. We know the passing game. We know O-line play, clean up penalties. Maybe it's, making sure to stay in front of not allowing the big plays out. They've been doing a lot of good things on defense, but a couple big plays, you can't have those happen in closer games when you get down to the season. Maybe it's wide receivers catching. Maybe it's just running the ball in the first half, we'll say, because until they look good in the fourth quarter in 2 games now. What facet of play, poll of the day, what facet of play do you most want to see improve this week for Texas? What facet of Texas play do you most want to see improve this week? Is it O-line play? Is it running play? Is it passing play? Is it play calling? Is it something on the defense? Is something I'm not mentioning? Is there something? Is there a player that you want to see? I want to see the most improvement out of them. Do we want to see more out of DJ Campbell? Now that we know there's injuries, do we want to see one of the younger guys step up? Do we want to see Anthony Hill continue to progress? Had a great game against Alabama. Not a great game against Wyoming. Missed his assignments a few times. Went a little too far sometimes. Happens. He's young. Tell us what you think. 512-337-3776 is the text line. What facet of Texas play this week do you most want to see improved? Where do you want it? Where are you looking, watching this game against Baylor, saying we're going to handle Baylor? We're going to go and play. We get that. We're all watching for them to win. But we want to see improvement because we want this team to go far. We did the poll yesterday asking how many games they were going to lose. Love you guys. 0 got the biggest vote. 1 was second. A couple of y'all voted for 3. I'm glad no one commented 4. I was getting ready to fight with somebody if they said 4, but 3. We'll get to your text. We'll get to more. We're going to talk about stopping Baylor. Some of that coming up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn, 1019 and 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on the Horn on a Wednesday afternoon. Theme of the week, playing songs about big. Getting the Big 12 Conference play. Getting ready for Baylor on Saturday. Big 12 Conference play, so we're saying big songs all week long, like big time from Peter Gabriel right there. Love the text coming in. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line. The question we're asking today, what facet of Texas play do you want to most see improved this week? What do you want to see? What's the thing you're watching the most to see improved? We'll love the text. We'll get to those in just a minute. Anything else you want to talk about? Anything else? Texas football, Dallas Cowboys, Houston Astros, Houston Texans, all that stuff. We can talk about it. We can talk about the Thursday night football game. Any of that? Got fantasy football. I'm not any good at fantasy football. I'll tell you that. I have opinions. Not any good. But I want to talk more about Baylor and Texas right now. And we're going to play some sound from Ian Rob B this morning. I'll hook him up. But it's about the defense. The Texas defense has been playing very well lately. They've had good game plans. They've been able to force what they've wanted out of teams. They've been able to get teams to kind of go against the game plan they thought was coming. PK has been playing very well. As we now get into Big 12 play, we know PK struggled his first year figuring out how Big 12 offenses were running. He was able to work with other coaches last year. He was able to work with Gary Patterson last year and, learn more about what teams in the Big 12 kind of play and how to play defense against them. But we're coming into year 3 and see what he's learned, how he's able to keep it growing. And you're going against a Baylor team that Aranda is supposed to be a defensive guy. This offense has not looked really good. You have a backup quarterback coming into the game now. Blake Shapen's not going to play. So you should be able to handle this. But if you get too excited and you think you can do too much, we saw what happened early against Wyoming when they put in a backup quarterback and they put in a running back who hadn't played. And they were able to get on the board early. You don't want to see that. It's one of the few things you can say about this Texas defense that needs to be cleaned up is stopping teams early, making sure that that you give the offense the first chance to score, even if they have to punt the ball once. That you come out and you start out strong on defense. Now, they finished strong. They played well in between strong. The first drive, so we're just saying that. And one of the parts of that my guys Ian Rob B bring up is winning early in possessions, because you put quarterbacks that aren't the top-tier quarterbacks and you start putting them in situations that are not the standard, not what they game plan for, not what they practice for all week. And it becomes a lot easier to play defense. Here's a clip from Hooking Up with Ian Rob B. Happens every morning right here at 6 to 11, right here on the Horn, talking about Rob Babers breaking down why it's so important to slow down Baylor on early possessions.
All right, let's get to some Texas Baylor discussion. I think the biggest, at least my top issue, the one thing I'm looking for in this game versus Baylor, and I think Texas right now 2 touchdown. Ty probably knows. Is it more than a 2 touchdown favorite?
I honestly don't know yet.
Okay,
it is. It's 14.5.
It was. Yeah, I see. It was like 13.5, and I think it's growing.
Before you get your
no, go ahead.
For doesn't it feel like it should be? If you just look at the numbers of these teams, it should be more.
Yeah, but I think they're expecting Baylor to put up a hell of a fight.
I know.
And Texas.
I'm just saying, if you see that number, you're like, wait a second.
Versus the number 3 team in the country?
With a backup quarterback who against Long Island threw for 113 yards. He's thrown for 1 touchdown and 3 picks this year.
I don't disagree
He was
with that.
dreadful against Utah.
Yeah, but well, you will admit Wyoming had a backup quarterback in there too and played with Texas for 3 quarters.
That's very
At
true.
home.
100% true.
And I think that's what makes it like, yeah, Texas they're one of those teams like it's really tough to predict Texas because they haven't necessarily been, like I said, a 4-quarter dominant team. They have these spurts where they can put a team away because they kind of just catch fire.
Explosive.
Right? They talk,
and that's what Baylor is not.
Category 5 explosivity.
Baylor is completely not explosive. Right? They're gosh, they ran the ball 50 times last week against Long Island. And
well, that's to hide Sawyer Robertson.
Yes,
right?
You're trying to hide your quarterback.
You got to hide that guy a little bit. But since we're talking about Sawyer Robertson, we can start there. I just think if Texas is able to get him in 3rd and long, that's how, was it Svoboda?
Svoboda.
Svoboda? Yeah. I can't say his name correctly. I apologize. Svoboda. Yeah, Svoboda. There you go. He actually stayed out of third and long for Wyoming, and that was the key. He was only in third and long, I think.
They managed that game very well,
Yes.
Wyoming did.
4 times that I counted, and third and long is 3rd and 7+. I counted third and long 4 times total. That's manageable. Like you said, manage the game for even an average to below average quarterback. That's manageable because the throws that you're going to have to make to convert aren't the degree of difficulty, right? Isn't very high, right? You're talking about slants. You're talking about quick outs, which is what Wyoming threw. A lot of quick outs. These are throws that quarterbacks warm up with every day. And they're relatively easier throws, high percentage throws. If Texas doesn't put Sawyer Robertson in third and long more than 4 times, that could be a problem. All right, that means Baylor is winning first down, which is probably going to be the most important down defensively for Texas in this game versus Baylor. If they can win first down, and that's going to be key because in gap control is going to be big. They run a lot of zone. I mean, a ton of wide zone, inside zone. The key is with zone, you got to be gap sound. You can penetrate because sometimes they actually encourage you to, right? And they'll kind of use that momentum and that penetration against you because they'll just sweep you on by the action. That's why you got to be gap sound against a team like Baylor. Otherwise, they'll break some big runs. And they got some explosive athletes in the backfield, too. So winning first down is key. You win first down, then you force them to second and long, third and long. And that's where they don't want Sawyer Robertson in third and long. That's when the Texas pass rush can really tee off. So defensively, I do think that first down is going to be key. Offensively, I'm watching, and this is probably the top thing that I'm watching, is what's the start for Sark, right? Sark now, I think he feels confident that all of his efforts in the offseason to get this team to focus on responding to adversity, making good adjustments in the second half, in the fourth quarter, that's paying off. This team is a fourth quarter team, and we want them to be a 4-quarter team, but they're not very good in the first quarter anymore, which is what Longhorn fans have become accustomed to. So I want to see in this game what the opening script's going to look like for Sark now that that's become a point of criticism from Longhorn fans, that the opening, and even he talked about it and addressed it in the post-game press conference, that the opening script is not as prolific and is not as explosive as it was in previous years. But the fourth quarter is the best fourth quarter response we've seen from this team, or at least for any Sark team since he's been here at Texas, and they're cultivating a bit of the other clutch gene. So here's what I think Sark should do it and what I think he will do. And I'm doing some deeper dives in the numbers about it, but I think against Baylor, he comes out in heavier personnel. And I listen, Sark loves 11, which is 1 back, 1 tight end. He's got that full complement of those great wide receivers, X-Man, A.D. Mitchell, and Jay Witt, right? And those guys it's really tough to match up with those wide receivers. But it's interesting. I think the offense may do better starting out in heavier personnel in this matchup, and maybe in some other matchups. Remember against Bama, they start out in 12 personnel. 1 back, 2 tight ends. They just go empty formation. Right? They present a power package and they pivot to pass principles. I think versus Baylor, you give them pretty much the option. If you go 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends, and that means you can run the football. If Baylor wants to, and Baylor has a good defensive line, if they want to match up with your heavier personnel, with their rush defense, then you can throw out of it. And you still have the advantage because your tight end is one of the best in the country, and your 2 wide receivers are really good, even if you can design and manipulate a one-on-one matchup, which Sark also does really well. That's essentially what Texas did a lot of versus Alabama. They came out in 12 personnel, 1 back, 2 tight ends. They threw the ball up close to 50% of the time versus Bama out of 12 personnel. Usually he's close to 30-something% there. I think against Baylor, if they come out in their sub packages and they want to still play the pass when you got your heavier personnel out there, that's great. You can just run the ball because you'll have the numbers advantage in the run game like you did versus Wyoming. You ran the ball a ton versus Wyoming late to really seal that game, and you did it with 12 personnel. I think Sark may have been revealing something there, that maybe his 12 personnel group is what he trusts to be able to run the football consistently. And I would say versus Baylor, that may be the package you see early. Now, I think Sark will get into the habit of, ending the game however he needs to, right? If he needs to break out 12 to do it or 11 to do it, he can do that. But to start the game, I think it'll have to be based on the matchup week to week. And I think this matchup with Baylor, I would encourage Baylor to try to stop the run for Texas. If they don't, great, shove it down their throat, let them choke on it. But if they, right, but
choke on it.
Right, yeah. But if they want to stop the run, they go, man, they're coming out with heavier sets. Texas got the biggest O line in the Big 12. We got to stop the run against Texas, and they match your heavy personnel. Great, that means one-on-one matchups on the outside for X-Man or JT Sanders or an AD Mitchell or whoever you put in there, Jay Witt. So that may be one of my ways, to really juice the opening script. Start out heavy, but pivot to pass in the heavy personnel. Present them with their own, pick your poison.
Well, if
scenario.
you go back and watch, the Texas State game they lost, they gave up 42 points, and they're just. And then the game that I would watch if you're watching film on Baylor is the Utah game. That's as close as you're going to get to like athletes as far as the Baylor Bears. They're just not very talented, Rod. They're just not. There's nobody that, like with Texas, whatever you think of the Longhorns and whether they play up or down to people, you see guys that just jump off the screen that are really talented,
Yes,
right?
you do.
They're just.
Yep.
Baylor doesn't have anybody really. You're like, who are these guys? They tried to survive the Utah game until their quarterback Sawyer Robertson threw 2 fourth-quarter interceptions that were unforgivable.
Yep.
And they're going to try to win this game if they're going to win it with their defense, right? They're going to try to do what Wyoming did, shorten the game, play great Dave Aranda defense, challenge Texas, force them. Because the one thing Quinn Ewers hasn't done this year is turn the ball over.
He's not turnover prone. He's not one of those guys.
Right, and if Texas doesn't turn the ball over in this game, I don't think this game will be very close. If they turn it over, all of a sudden you could have a close game in Waco. This Baylor team, Dave Aranda has not done a good job of bringing in talent, just based on what I've seen through 3 games so far.
No, I totally agree with you. But the one thing I will say about Dave Aranda, he's a defensive mind.
Sure he is.
We don't know if he's a great head coach, a good head coach anymore, because it just hasn't. It seems like he did more with Matt Rule's players, and now that he has been able to build it, his way and construct this roster his way, it seems like the program's progressing. But he did expose Texas pass protection issues last year. And he was able to do it with a really impressive pressure package. And that's, you've heard me say it ad nauseum about the amoeba fronts and the simulated pressures. That's why Baylor had 5 sacks last season. So he exposed Texas and pretty much provided other teams with the blueprint to how to pressure the Texas quarterback. And in this game, I'm wondering if he's going to bring back a lot of those concepts, which also Texas has struggled with a little bit this season, struggled in the Rice game with some of those concepts. Even Wyoming brought him out there. I think he's going to add to those pressure packages, and you'll see him early and often if Texas is in predictable passing situations. If they can stay out of that by going heavy early on and playing a little bit of bully ball, and if they, like I said, if they want to match you and try to encounter your bully ball, great. That means I'll get favorable matchups in the passing game. So I think that's the way to kind of manipulate it, if you're Sark.
No question. No question.
Some good stuff there from Rob Babers, Aaron Hogan from Hook 'em Up with Ian Rob B. Definitely giving you more of a viewpoint of what some of the biggest battles in this Texas Baylor game is. We'll, of course, be getting into it more as the week goes on. But, those early down matchups on defense. That's one of the few things you can say about this Texas defense that we're talking about things that you need to improve upon. Getting some stops early in the downs. And, I get Texas playing it safe because they have been burned a couple times, so you're going to try and back off it a little bit. But getting some pressure early, putting guys behind the chains. We know it's possible because it happens to us constantly. So we'll see how they come out on that. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to start reading some of your texts. 512-337-3776. 512-337-3776 is the text line. We are asking you the poll of the day. What facet of Texas play this week do you most want to see improved? So which facet? Is it play calling? Is it pass blocking? Is it penalties? Is it Quinn Ewers and throwing the ball? What is it? Let us know. It's something I'm not mentioning. Something defensively. Let us know. 512-337-3776. We're going to read those texts, and we're going to come back, get into that. And then once we get into the 6 o'clock hour, we'll have some more Texas talk, more text line, and some NFL talk as well. All coming up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. Back on the Sports Complex here on a Wednesday afternoon. Reading some of your texts, 512-337-3776. We'll start reading them. We'll get to as many as we can until the top of the hour. Once we get to the top of the hour, then we will take another break and we'll come back and read more of your texts. How about that? We were asking today the biggest Patrick's Big Fat Poll of the day. What facet of Texas play this weekend do you most want to see improved? Is the poll of the day. I like from Daydrinker77. Special teams as a whole. I've not thought special teams was too bad. I've been okay with it. I'd like to see it keep improving. I think Xavier Worthy's brought a spark to it at a point in punt returns. I know they don't want to have kickoff returns really as much anymore in college football, so they're trying to, get away from it. So I don't know how much of the play there. I think we've made some decent defensive plays as well on special teams. So I'm not as worried about special teams as some of the other areas, but they needs to keep improving. Jeff Banks is a great coach. He's done really good things. So I like that Jeff Banks is going to keep this team improving, and he's got the team bought into it, which is a big thing. Just want to see the intensity level high from start to finish. That's a big one. Is energy levels to start the game. They have fixed the energy level at the end of the game. They fixed, fourth quarter. As of right now. We say as of right now, 3 games in. That fourth quarter energy level is at as good as you can get it right now. But can you get that energy in the first part of the game? Can you start off stronger? Can you start off in the first half, go into halftime with the lead, and then come out in the second half and then produce at that level? Are you going to be able to do that? I agree. I like that one. I would like to see them win and finish with this rivalry with an utmost respect for both teams. Just win. Look, you got to have respect. Go out there, shake hands. You're the better team. Go in there, shake their hands. You've been playing every year for a long, long time. So go ahead, go in there and finish. No disrespect. You don't need to. You don't need to do that. So you can go in there with all the respect in the world and just say, we're the number 3 team in the country. This is why. Go beat them. I want to see Quinn light it up. I want to see him distribute the ball to all of his receivers, especially JT Sanders. I think that JT Sanders is going to be more in the mix. It'll depend. Wyoming really focused on shutting down Xavier Worthy. They really focused on shutting down JT Sanders. That was their big goal, was if we get away from them, we know Sark's going to game plan for them. We know Quinn's going to look at them more. He should have gone to Jay Witt maybe a few more times in that game. Maybe try and get over to A.D. Mitchell a little bit more. But I will say, I agree with you that it would be nice to see JT Sanders involved more in the passing game again this week. I think, too, of getting these early starts, a tight end is a great way to get you started early in the week or early in a game. In those early downs. I know Sark doesn't usually go to it. He likes to kind of reserve JT Sanders a little bit more and kind of set him off once people figure out the receivers, then JT Sanders is wide open. That's kind of how Sark likes to do it, but maybe change it up a bit. You don't always need to do that. I want to see Quinn be consistently sharp. Yeah, we want to see Quinn, and a lot of that's play calling and what positions you put him in. Giving what's taken. I want to see what his audibles are going to be, and if he can check out of plays and check into run plays and not try and be the hero, which he hasn't, and kind of set him up in a way that if the defense is going to give you the run and they're going to try and take away everything and disguise things and give him the pass, just kind of get the ball out, not necessarily always have to throw the ball. I know he wants to throw the ball, but I'd like to see him be consistently sharp too. I think that the game plan he had against Alabama was good to get Quinn some reps early and get him feeling good. I like all of those things. Get one more and we'll go to break. First possession TD, I like. I will say first 2 possessions TD. A first possession touchdown may be difficult because Sark has never been good on that first series. Just in the 3 years he's been here, that first series has not been great. Now his game plan, his script has been good. They will score 2 or 3 in the script. But that first drive, for whatever reason, he has not been historically very good at. So we're going to have to see if Sark is going to be able to figure that out as we go. We're going to keep reading your text, 512-337-3776. Your concerns, comments, whatever you want to talk about Texas football. We're going to talk some Cowboys as well coming up at the top of the hour. And the bowl of the day. What facet of Texas play do you most want to see improve this week? Send that in, 512-337-3776. We got to take a break. Top of the hour. We'll come back. Got some more talk for you, more text, more talk, more Sports Complex. Coming up here on The Horn, 1019 AM 1260, The Horn app, and hornfm.com. Hour 2 of the Sports Complex on a Wednesday afternoon here on The Horn. Going to get some more of your text, 512-337-3776. The show is much more fun when you guys are involved. Sending me text what you want to talk about, what you got on the big fat poll today, all that. 512-337-3776. We'll get to more of those. We'll get to some NFL talk. There is some breaking news. Breaking news in the NFL. I don't know how big it is, but there's some breaking news in the NFL. We'll get to that as well. And, maybe we'll get some MLB. Maybe we'll get some more Texas football talk as we get ready for Baylor. Get into all that here in hour 2, a full hour here on the Sports Complex. The Rangers have already played. The Astros have already played. Mariners have already played. So we get you a full hour here on the second hour. Like we'll give you tomorrow, a full hour on the second hour here on the Sports Complex. Getting back to some of you guys' texts talking about, we asked you what facet of play for Texas do you most want to see improved this weekend? You still need to improve things. You're only in week 4. You still got to improve. If you want to get to a point, I know you're number 3 in the country, but you can tell by the line that if Vegas isn't convinced that you're the number 3 team in the country, that you're not there yet, you made your favorite every game. But a Big 12 opponent like Baylor, who has not looked great, like to see it a little bit better. My man Nate, I'd like to see consistent scoring throughout the game, populate the scoreboard. I would too. I would really enjoy seeing a populated scoreboard. They have been playing great in the fourth quarter. They've had 2 games in the past 2 weeks with 21 points scored in the fourth quarter. That's 42 points in the fourth quarter. I think it took them like week 9 or 10 last year to get to 42 points in the fourth quarter. Throughout all of it was like week 8 or 9 where they finally got to that many points scored in the fourth quarter collectively throughout the season last year. Because they just were not a good second half team. They're definitely not a good fourth quarter team last season. So that is a great benefit, but you still got to play 4 quarters, all 4 of them. And you don't want to leave it up to chance that you're still going to find that energy in the fourth quarter. We've seen it with the Astros this season. To draw the analogy, the Astros basically for a lot of the season we're relying on getting hits on the bullpen. As long as we can get through we'll just have smart at bats and get to the bullpen. And once we get to the bullpen, we'll put up numbers. And now they're getting a little bit later in the year. The smart at bats aren't doing as well. And then once they get to the bullpen, they're not making the same amount of damage. So they're having issues right now. They get the win today, walk it off today, but they're having issues. And that's what you see at Texas as the season progresses and teams start to figure out your trends. And we know Sark, I'm still not 100% that Sark is the best second half coach of all time. So we want to see that. We want to see the 4 quarters improvement. We want to see if Texas establishes a running game early, we win. But have you seen the Texas O-line push the opposing defensive line yet? I haven't seen them push them too much. I know this O-line is getting better, and I know that we've seen it a little bit when we get to the fourth quarter. We've seen them push them to get the lines open. We haven't seen the pancake world where they're just shoving through guys where you'd like to see them at, especially against the Rice, especially against the Wyoming. You're not going to do it against Bama as much. We have seen them impose their will in the fourth quarter against Bama. We have seen them impose their will in the fourth quarter against Wyoming and let Jonathan Brooks just kind of go downhill on guys. Open up big holes. Push guys where they need them to go. But I agree with you. You'd like to see this O-line take that next step forward as the season progresses to be one of the most veteran O-lines, O-line that returns so many players, to be able to keep pushing forward. And part of it is where, you just have to keep running the ball early to keep those defenders and keep everybody on their back and their heels and let them get beat up. And, you talk about those offensive line battles of if you continually in pass coverage, you're having to step back, you're having to be on your toes, and you're trying to not get knocked on your heels as an offensive lineman. It sucks to do that the entire game and never get your chance to necessarily push forward. So you would like to see the O-line get a little bit, get those shots to push forward. And, sometimes you get those on screens, but you have to be careful because, the man downfield, we saw that in the Alabama game when Milrose scrambled too much and we saw the man downfield. But I like it. I like seeing the getting the running game early. So we saw Jonathan Brooks could do it. Hopefully CJ Baxter will be back. I'm sure we'll know more about that tomorrow. But yeah, I'd like to see them establish that a little bit earlier. Have 60, 70 rushing yards in the first half at least, as opposed to putting up 110 in the second half because you're just now running the clock and you've got everything going. see the passing. I know we're going to want to throw deep. Had a couple good ones against Alabama and Wyoming. Rice, even though short ones were terrible. So hopefully the aim and everything will be better. Quinn Ewers, I agree. And a lot of people, that is where we're going, is with Rice, or with Quinn Ewers, are they going to be able to, is Quinn Ewers going to be the guy we saw against Alabama every week, or are we going to see a different player? Is he going to be able to figure out the defenses? There are a couple of pieces of kryptonite for Quinn Ewers that basically every team is going to be able to run in the Big 12. That's what we want to see. Can Quinn Ewers beat his kryptonite, which is 3 safeties? Can he beat all the things Rob Babers always talks about, all those different disguising and all that other defenses? Can Quinn Ewers beat those? That's what we want to see. We'll get to Chan. Chan's got a few for me here. Offense 1, stay ahead of the chains. So offensive, stay ahead of the chains, improve on short passing, maintain the running game, and defensively, no big plays. Make Baylor be patient, bend but don't break. Texas should win by 10. Offensively, no turnovers, and he is concerned. Don't be as concerned, Chan. I feel we're in a good place here. We're in a good place. You want to see we've got a couple of people that says let's drop passes. I agree with that as well. That's something, if you want to get Quinn in a rhythm, dropping passes is one of the worst things for quarterbacks. It takes a lot to get out of it. I think Quinn is doing well of going to the sideline and regrouping, but in a drive, I don't think he's quite at the place in a drive to be able to have a drop and then bounce right back and throw it right back to that guy and feel confident about it. And it's just really hard. That's next level stuff. So I think that you're right that less drop passes on this one as well. I think that is going to be a big issue as well. It's crazy how many things we are discussing that need to be improved. And when I ask you what's the one thing, there's a lot. There's a lot that Texas still needs to work on, being the number 3 team in the country. It doesn't quite feel like it, does it? I know it doesn't quite feel like they're the number 3 team in the country this year, and I don't know why it doesn't, but I think it's because we've been so beaten down as Texas fans that there's this worry that this is all kind of a mirage and the Alabama game didn't matter as much. I don't think that's true. I think Texas is progressing right where they're supposed to be. They're right in line. The question is it this year, or do you have to kind of rebuild with some new guys because JT Sanders goes pro and Jalen Ford goes pro and Xavier Worthy goes pro and you start to rebuild, or are you going to be able to do it with these guys? Can we just do better than Texas State? We're doing better than Texas State. I get it. We're doing better than Texas State. We're playing Texas State would have lost by 60 to Alabama. I think they're doing well. Love and support. I'm happy for Texas State that they're doing well right now. But I'm not going to give them that. I'm not going to give them that full credit that they're doing better than Texas. I think they're coming out and playing strong though. They are. There's a different point of games too where you're allowing guys to play. We'll talk about Justin Fields in just a second. But there is something of Texas really trying to minimize mistakes early in this season. I think as this season goes further, there will be a little bit more looseness in this Texas team as coaches start to let them play a little bit more. Right now, there's so much in trying to figure out and trying to make sure everybody is prepared for what they know is coming up. I think all of that stuff. We're not going to talk about disgraced Baylor coaches. I'm aware the disgraced Baylor coaches exist. We're not going to talk about them, though. We're not going to give them the time of the day. We're not going to let them on our field wearing our equipment. We're not going to do that. We're not Oklahoma. It is the Pancake Factory does need to increase the production of the line at the facility of the chief engineer is saying. Yeah, I agree with that. And we need to get Jay Whitmore involved. I agree with that. I don't think it's going to happen. Sadly, I don't know if there may be a game or two where the game plan is get it to Jay Whitmore. I don't believe that's going to be the case, unfortunately. I think that, I think we know what Sark wants. He wants explosive plays. He feels like he can get them more out of Xavier Worthy, JT Sanders, and Adonai Mitchell, so that's who he's going to throw to more. I love Jay Witt because I think Jay Witt is exactly my type of where he's a Texas player, and he's that guy who can be dirty and gritty and get you those yards, and we're talking about slow starts. And if you want to give it to the veteran and get him the ball, and, I know, he may drop a pass and Xavier Worthy drops 2, and Xavier Worthy's still going to get the next pass thrown to him. Just Sark's mentality. So Sark wants that guy. He doesn't necessarily want the grinder who's going to get you 8. He wants the guy who's going to – and I'll give Xavier Worthy credit. I've seen him bounce off and fight through things this year. He is coming at it with a different attitude this year, and I think it's because he talked to scouts. I think the reality is Xavier Worthy went out and realized that he wasn't going to get drafted in the early rounds, and that people were saying taking him as a chance, and he needed to change the narrative, and I think he's doing that. So I'll give all the props to Xavier that he has changed his attitude on the field. He's changed how he's talking to me. He's changed his play on the field. He's fighting really hard. He's going out trying to make those big plays. He's being active. He's being a great leader and teammate. I'll give him all the credit for that. I'd like to see Jaywood involved more too. I don't know if it's going to happen. Couple quick pieces of NFL for you. Kareem Hunt today re-signed with the Browns. Not a huge shock that they needed somebody after the Nick Chubb injury. They wanted to bring somebody in. Kareem Hunt's still available, knows the system. I believe it was a 1-year, $4 million contract. So, I don't know if anybody was offering him that. I don't know if he just didn't want to do the workouts, whatever it was. It's an easy fit. If he had signed somewhere else, then yeah, they would have to figure something out. But he is able to end up back on he's able to end up back on the Browns. The breaking news we have just heard, Cam Akers has been traded from the Rams after 2 years of everybody telling me that Cam Akers is going to be the guy, and in fantasy football, people still drafting him. And I don't know why you can't see the writing on the wall that Sean McVay does not like Cam Akers. He does not trust him. And look, we talk about this with Sark all the time. It's about trust. We saw Jonathan Brooks. We know what Jonathan Brooks can do. And so we wonder, why is Jonathan Brooks not the starting running back? It has to be a trust issue. It has to be the drop touchdown passes or whatever it is. There is a trust issue there that he's going to be able to bring it. Sean McVay has zero trust in Cam Akers to not only bring it at a high level, but also hold on to the football. So Cam Akers is now traded to the Minnesota Vikings. They basically gave him nothing. They swapped picks in 2026. So it's a few years off. I haven't seen what the exact picks are. If you know, you can send it on the text line. But I know they are switching picks in 2026. The experiment in Minnesota, I still don't get. I get you didn't want to pay Dalvin Cook. You're ready to move on. You saw Madison did it. But now you're not running the ball just at all. It's just an all-throw offense. And you're hoping that that's going to work out for you, that you're just going to throw the football over and over and over again. And I get it. You've got Justin Jefferson. Jordan Addison's playing better than I thought he would his rookie season, but he's doing a good job. You get TJ Hawkinson in there. You got threats. You got Kirk Cousins, who's not bad. He's not an elite guy that I would say, let's go Kansas City Chiefs on it. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't go Kansas City Chiefs on it if I have Kirk Cousins. I don't have the tight end. I think TJ Hawkinson is not quite Travis Kelce. There's definitely not the relationship there. But they add Cam Akers to that. So now expect Cam Akers to play 4 games for Minnesota and get on the bench because he fumbles the ball. And you can't have a run game where you run the ball 8 times, 10 times a game, and one of them is a fumble. And that seems to be where Minnesota's going. I see more Whittington stuff. I'm going to get to it in a minute. I want to talk a little bit about Dan Quinn before we get there. We're going to take another break, and then we will get back, and we'll talk a little bit more on the text line, okay? Let's get to – I want to play something that Dan Quinn was talking about, though, in this Dallas defense, because the Dallas defense is working at a very high level, and it's kind of been boring to talk about the Cowboys because of how good this defense has been, because we understand the offense doesn't have to do a lot. They don't have to. They just have to hold on to the ball, move it a little bit, keep the defense off the field so those numbers will stay up. But that defense and the pass rush and what they're able to do and what Micah Parsons has been able to do, we know what he's been able to do with Dan Quinn. What I found interesting in Dan Quinn talking to the media the other day was he started to talk about Micah Parsons, we can move him wherever and we can put him wherever on the line and we can do this. But people started to figure out, well, we know if he's pass rushing. We know if he's backing off. We know what he's doing because he's starting to tip things off. So we know he did boxing to get his handwork up and learn to fight off this offseason. Well, Dan Quinn found another thing about disguising Micah Parsons and disguising how he's going to use him, which is taking another step into what Rob Babers loves, positionless football. And it's the next step, I believe, in positionless football. Here's Dan Quinn talking about realizing with Micah Parsons that he has to start using him in different ways to hide how he's using him.
Yeah, he and others have pushed me to find out things that somebody can do. And so they don't have to come in for a specific package, but if they can be in the game and then we can move the pieces around, I thought that would be more valuable as opposed to, I remember a year ago, a friend that I'd coached against had said, we knew if it was 3 D linemen in him or 4 D linemen in him, where he would be. And so I remembered that lesson and heading into the offseason to say, okay, that's a good challenge for us to find how we can be in a package that we want to be, but make it look different without having to change, an entire, defensive package. So that is, kind of the catalyst of why it got pushed there. And JK does that, and Leighton does that, and some others. But having that ability to move around within, and like I said, some of the guys in basketball have influenced me on that too, to say, here's a guy who can handle the ball, but he doesn't traditionally play a 5. So how would you use a player like that? And so when you have somebody that has unique stuff, it's forced me to, push myself in that direction too.
So that's where he started to realize, well, if I'm only putting in 3 and if I have 3 and Micah Parsons on 3 D linemen, they know he's coming at me. They know what we're using him for. So if I want to put in a lineup and I don't want to tip my hand at all to what I'm doing by the personnel being on the field, I'm starting to use my positionless football all in different packages, and we're changing up the playbook and pulling plays out of different formations and figuring out how to make them work. Where we're usually having 3 down linemen, now I can put 4 because it's Micah Parsons, and I can use him in different ways and start to confuse them because I was telling some of my plays. And it's a new step in positionless football that if you get enough of these guys, that you can continue to move things around and you don't have to switch personnel. You don't have to switch formations. You don't have to switch any of it. But you can completely change up what you're doing. You can completely switch up the look that they're coming at, where safeties are coming up and playing in linebacker spots, and linebackers are rushing, and defensive ends are switching which side they're on, and some defensive end is playing inside or outside. And part of that is more and more players, because Dan Quinn stayed, and one of the reasons he stayed is because he knew he could do something special with his defense. Here's Dan Quinn talking about DeMarcus Lawrence, and now that he can move him around.
Yeah, I thought, as he played really aggressive, and that's, no Dan, but there's a level that you can go to where he's playing at different spots. I saw him have a really good rush outside at the right end, where he's played so much left end and had good things. But when we can move guys around into different spaces, I think that's what really, sets it apart. And so he's so active. He thinks about the ball. You saw him on a rush. He got his hand on one that was, I believe, it was down near their end zone. It hit the ground where Diggs was, but he got a piece of that one. It's just the awareness to not just rush, but to try to, extend and win the last yard of the pass rush. And so those are the things that I've seen with him, but he has really improved where now he can really align almost anywhere along the defensive line and feel very comfortable doing that. And so you can imagine that's not as easy to do when you've played mostly left end for your career. So I really tip my hat to him for not only accepting that, but to say, okay, hey, this is another part of how we play.
Listen, what you're doing with Micah kind of influences that a little bit with him when he says, hey, he's working with this guy.
I think it's part of it, but not the driving reason. Sometimes we just want to, put him in a matchup too. And so not one size fits all. And so we do talk a lot about, Micah and Trey and a lot, but there's a lot of other players that have that's why I was so proud, like I said, of Curse and of Hooker and a guy like D-Law and DA, that we move into different spots. And when they get their chances, they nail those. And sometimes you can overplay to one player. And that's what's fun about our group. If you do that, we're going to be prepared to attack in another way. And so if you overplay your hand to one side, there's some other people that are ready to take that action.
That's what's making the Dallas Cowboys defense so elite this season, is the ability to not only play positionless football and throw and have a guy like Micah Parsons, who is next level, and have a guy like Trayvon Diggs, who is next level, then bring in safeties that are being able to play in multiple different positions and play in the run game and play in the pass game. Not only that, but now you have multiple players on your line even with DeMarcus Lawrence, and you can mask it because they don't have to know who's the pass rusher. You can put in a DeMarcus Lawrence and move him around to where he be in a natural pass rushing place and back him out of it because Micah Parsons is rushing, and the plays that they thought they knew were coming and the reads they thought they knew were going to happen are now all changed up. And the reality is the play could look the exact same and 3 different people could be coming at you. And instead of changing formations to have to do this like you normally do, or change personnel group to cover for something else, you're starting to get players that are good enough that you are able to do it on a major scale. That's why the Cowboys have been elite. That is why the Cowboys are going to continue to be at a high level. And as long as Mike McCarthy continues to do what he's been doing, which is play the good boy and play the company line and put in and just let's not be fun. Let's just play football. We got CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Cooks will be coming back. Tony Pollard, we're using him. We gave him the most carries, but we're not overusing Tony Pollard. We're figuring out a way to make it work with Rico Dowdle and Deuce Vaughn getting some snaps, putting Kevontae Turpin in there. This Cowboys team could be something to talk about. We'll know more once we get into some, once we get to that 49ers game. We'll know a little bit more. Until then, I don't know how much we're going to know. But once we get to that 49ers game, we can see some. If this Dallas Cowboys team could be a special one because of Dan Quinn, because of what he's been able to build there in that defense. It's an impressive thing. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Jay-Witt. We may play some more sound from me and Rob B. We'll take more of your texts, 512-337-3776, what you guys want to talk about, what you want to see improved out of Texas this week, what you want to see from Texas this week. Any other questions you got, anything else you want to talk about, hit us up, 512-337-3776. We'll be right back here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019, AM 1260, the Horn app, and at hornfm.com. Back in the Sports Complex, Wednesday afternoon, playing some big songs for you to get ready for Big 12 conference play. We're talking on the text line, 512-337-3776, talking about things you'd like to see improved. And something that came up that I think is an interesting point, and it's something that I'm a big fan of Jay Witt. I think we're all big fans of Jay Witt, and we know what he can do, and we like to see what he can do. And we're hoping that, that something will happen. But it's been now year 3 that we're kind of waiting, maybe year 4. We're waiting for Jay Witt to be more involved in this offense by catching passes. And I think there's something to be noted here about why I don't think Jay Witt is going to have the production in the way that people are asking for it. Even though we know that as a short yardage guy is getting there and how he runs with the ball like a running back, there's a lot of good things of why if we were coaching, we would probably get the ball in his hands more than Sark is. I think part of what's happening with Sark in his playbook, is according to Jordan Whittington, or what's happening to Jordan Whittington, is that Sark does trust Jordan Whittington. So much about this is about trust. Who do you trust in which situation? And Sark does trust Jordan Whittington. He does very much value him, and he's in a lot of these plays drawn up, but for not catching the ball. So not in the way that's going to make Jordan Whittington the star player that, can make the big play and change the game. And he's going to be a man coverage. He's not the fastest guy, so, he can get kind of open, and if they're playing zone, he can definitely get open and find a gap in there. He knows what he's doing. And if he's a man, he's probably not going to get it open a ton. But that's beside the point. The point is, when Sark's drawing up plays, when Sark's thinking about what he wants to use guys to do, what he trusts Jay Witt to do is block and block downfield. And a lot of these plays, trying to get something sprung and trying to get something out, you need a guy that you can rely on to do what you need him to do, the dirty work. And in all reality, if I told you, hey, we need to block somebody on a screen, or we need to block somebody, we're going to have Xavier Worthy coming over, or we're going to have whoever coming over, and we need someone to block on the end. And so we need someone to run about a 10-yard route, but keep the guy in front of him. And as soon as the ball's caught, we need you to turn around and start blocking downfield, right? But what we need now, if I say who's going to do that, if you're just on the text line, you can tell me, who do you want to do that? Xavier Worthy, little guy, the smallest guy that you're going to do it. Adonai Mitchell, who we have seen has missed some blocks. We've seen, JT Sanders, who is not necessarily always engaged. Who do you trust the most to make that block? I know Sark trusts the most. It's Jay Witt, because he knows he's going to make it. He knows he's going to be the most reliable guy to spring a big play. And it may not be for him, but he's the most reliable guy. So he's being utilized. He's very much being used in the game. He's in the progressions as a check down guy at points. He's at all those things. The reality is Sark likes him and trusts him in a different role, so he doesn't necessarily get used in the role that he may prefer, that we may prefer for him. I think that there's a lot of potential, but when you talk about a wide receiver room, that there's guys behind Jay Witt, like Jonte Cook and Nibbles and guys like that are going to be coming up in the future years that are going to be killing it. Like those guys, Jay Witt will get his chances when he needs to. He's going to be, and every NFL team's going to take a look at him because they know what he can do, and they know what his energy and his level is, and he may get that opportunity at the next level if he finds in the right system. I don't know if Sark's system is the right system for him, but what he can do to help the rest of his team with his blocking ability, with what he's able to do, route running and everything else off of the ball, pulling safeties or doing whatever else he can do, that's what Sark loves him for. So he'll get some passes, but that's usually going to be a little bit lower on the progression chart, and I don't know if Quinn gets there that often. So I think that's why I don't think that Whittington is going to necessarily be the high numbers receiver when you say we want to get the ball to Mitchell more, we want to get the ball to Worthy more, we want to get the ball to Sanders more. Then 2 to 3 passes a game, you're looking at the pretty high level of that's pretty much on the ceiling. I don't think he's ever going to get more than 5 attempts, 5 targets a game. I just don't think he is. And maybe he does. I don't see it happening. We can say that they're going to set it up by going the other way, but that hasn't been the case in the years past. So I don't see it. But I do think he's a beast. I think he's very crucial to the success of the Longhorns going forward. I do want to play you something before we get out of here of Ian Rugby, because the breakdowns they do on on the NFL teams, and they talk a little bit Cowboys here, and they talk a little bit of Texans, which I haven't been able to talk a lot of Texans, but I like this because I am a Texans fan, and C.J. Stroud has been impressive. He hasn't been able to do a lot, but it's going to lead me to a little bit more of what we can get into a way of time of me discussing what the problem is right now in Houston. But I want to kind of set this up with Houston, with Dallas. It's Ian Rabi this morning talking about the state of NFL football in the state of Texas.
What if I told you that C.J. Stroud was 4th in passing yards in the NFL? That surprise you?
Yes,
He is. Isn't that crazy?
that is crazy. And the
It's the 4th most passing yards in the NFL.
Texans 0-2, and they've been in come from behind mode in both games.
So that's kind of why it does make sense. But considering all the injuries on the O-line, and he's been hit a ton. I believe the Texans are one of the leaders in hits allowed, the quarterback hits allowed. So I thought he's done pretty well. Just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, well, I think
Saw that stat.
as a Texans fan, you and I are kind of downtrodden at this point and have been for a bit. But there is optimism because he looks like a pretty good player, and that's what we saw Bryce Young on Monday night, right, the first pick in the draft playing for Carolina, and you'd argue he has more around him right now than C.J. Stroud and not playing as well. As we've said, the Texans have been handcuffed by injuries on their offensive line. DeMeco Ryans couldn't have drawn up a worse way to start his career as head coach in Houston by losing 4 starting offensive linemen.
Yeah, he just had some bad luck.
That's bad luck. That's bad luck. And
it's the worst place to have injuries for a young quarterback too. You're trying to break in a young quarterback, and you put 3 starting offensive linemen. 4.
Well, Laramie Tunsil didn't play on Sunday.
Yeah.
So you got both tackles out. You've got your center. You're down to your 3rd center, and your right guard, your left guard's hurt, Kenyon Green. So you're just patchworking, to say the least, that offensive line. Which offensive line play in the NFL is, I think, diminished.
It has all across
the
the league because of the new CBA rules about practice and how much contact you can have. And then there's nobody playing in the preseason either.
No, exactly.
Like, nobody's really playing in the preseason.
You combine those two, and then you got 4 backups. I mean, how many offensive linemen do you even carry? I mean, you're carrying 4. These are taxi squad players essentially that are playing offensive line for you. Until you get everybody back. So, and for him to be, playing that well, and the fact that he's 4th in passing yards and he still hasn't thrown an interception yet. He hasn't thrown a pick, which is optimistic for.
I agree.
Reason for optimism for Houston, even though they're 0-2. Obviously, Cowboys have a lot of reason to be optimistic because they're 2-0.
Cowboys on another level right now.
And they're cranking it up to go out to Arizona and crush the Cardinals.
Leading the NFL in turnover differential at +7. The Bucks are next at +5, actually. Bucks and the Eagles are 3rd at +4. So the Cowboys defense and the Cowboys offense, you got to give them the credit. We're not talking enough about the offense. I'm actually working on a little breakdown, so we'll get into that new Tex Coast offense and actually, what entails and obviously the new dynamic of it. But they don't turn the football over, and that's the biggest issue, or at least that was the biggest issue last year. That's the one thing everybody's watching. Are they taking care of the football? Is Dak taking care of the football? He almost threw a pick 6, though. We'll say that.
Almost.
Sauce dropped it.
But at the same time, the 7 turnovers forced and 0 committed through 2 games. It's hard to find a stat that, isn't good for the Cowboys right now. I mean, they're through 2 games with the New York teams, New York City teams, the Jets and Giants. They've just overwhelmed both of those teams. And I know the Jets are without Aaron Rodgers and the Giants are the Giants, but at the same time, those are 2 NFL teams, and it's been like the varsity playing the JV in those 2 games.
Can't watch the 49ers versus the Giants. Not that you can do that in the NFL because it's not apples to apples, but I want to see that defense is a dominant defense too.
Yeah, well, that's the first game of the week, right, with the Giants out in San Francisco. Giants have started with a tough schedule, right, to start with the Cowboys and 49ers in the first 3 weeks. They're going to see 2 of the best in their conference and in this league. And, of course, they had Arizona sandwiched in there, which they're able to rally to beat on Sunday. But the Cowboys will now go to Arizona to see those Cardinals, and Cowboys should be 3-0 headed into a weekend 2 weeks from now showdown with the New England Patriots up in Arlington.
Yeah. The Cowboys schedule right now, it looks like they're going to dominate some teams until, not dominate, but that defense is going to be a dominant defense until they match up with the 49ers. And then that's the test.
That's the
to
test.
See if that defense is truly the best defense in the league. We'll get into that a little bit later on. But I thought that C.J. Stroud, I saw those stats and I was like, man, C.J. Stroud, he's playing really well. We don't talk about it enough. So I want to give a shout out to the Texans randomly. We don't talk a lot of Texans.
Yeah, I think they'll win some games this year, right? I mean, I think.
Well, just because he's playing way better than everybody thought. And Will Anderson is too, by the way.
Yeah,
Anderson's-
those two guys look like foundational players, which you
Good
got
job.
to have something to build around if you're a struggling franchise like the Texans have been.
Well, you gave up a lot
You did.
for those foundational, for the Will Anderson foundational piece.
Well, listen, we don't. You don't root for injuries, but if you're a Houston fan, the Nick Chubb injury on Monday night, which was devastating to the Browns, the poor play of Deshaun Watson. Texans fans are rooting for the Browns to not be very good this year because that's their draft pick come in the first round next year because they gave up their own to acquire Will Anderson. And that's Cowboys are thinking Super Bowl or bust. Texans are thinking, when can we draft again to bring in some more players? The other thing is, when can we get our
Different mindset.
offensive line healthy?
Yeah.
For sure. This says, start breaking out your walking shoes, E. That's from Nick and San Angelo on our text line. Well,
they're that defense. It is a different level defense. I mean, Cowboys fans are actually saying this may be the best defense since their dynastic run in the 90s. And there are some, I think you said, E, you think it's better.
well, I just they're
fast.
because those teams were built on the offense for me. I know the defense was good. You don't win Super Bowls without both sides of the ball. There's no question about that. Certainly 3 and 4 years. But that was built around that offensive line, Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, the triplets, and then the defense was good. And especially when they added Charles Haley and Deion Sanders late in the run.
Yeah, it complemented the offense, though.
This group, and that's why, I don't want to fast forward to week 5, but I think they're going to smash the Cardinals. I don't think the Cardinals game is going to be much closer than these two New York matchups have been.
They'll stat pad.
And then they'll come home to play the offensively challenged New England Patriots with Bill Belichick. And that, the brands are big, right? Those are probably the 2 of the 5 biggest brands in all of pro football, Cowboys and Patriots. But the Patriots aren't that good. They're 0-2, and they lost 2 home games to start the year, right? They got beat at home by Miami last Sunday night. They opened with a loss to who beat them week 1? New England.
The Patriots?
Eagles.
The Eagles.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, the Eagles went in there and beat them in week 1. And so they're 0-2, and they'll be coming to Dallas. So the Cowboys are going to be 4-0. And by the way, Mac Jones, their quarterback.
Who?
Mac Jones.
Who?
Quarterback in New England. He has not completed he has not completed a pass. He has not completed a pass 20 yards down the field through 2 games. Like he did.
Yeah, neither has Joe Burrow.
He's like 0 for 10. He's 0 for 10. Any pass that's traveled more than 20 yards down the field, all incomplete. Everything's underneath. The Cowboys will swallow that up, and that's where the Cowboys are right now. They've separated from the rest of the NFC, and some would argue even in the NFL. So they're gonna crush teams like the Cardinals and the Giants and the Jets, which is reason for great optimism. But the barometer and the question becomes, where do you match up with the Eagles and where do you match up with the 49ers?
Yeah.
And week 5 they'll play the 49ers. They'll have 2 games this year with the Eagles, and
that's how we know. And then you got that Buffalo game, bigger, and that Miami game later on in the season. Really, those are the big tests. I'm with you because how dominant the defense looks. I'm not saying they're gonna make everybody look silly because it's the NFL, but if your quarterback is not up to a certain caliber, the Cowboys are gonna make that team look silly. So any quarterback that's not considered of the upper echelon of the quarterbacks in the NFL, they'll make that look silly.
Yeah.
And I'm just saying, now Brock Purdy, you're like, Brock Purdy's not an elite quarterback. Well, he plays like one right now. He's on that kind of streak.
he is. He's never lost a start.
Yeah, so nobody actually has exposed him yet because it's the NFL. He will be exposed at one point. And Jalen Hurts is playing. Did you hear just sidebar that Jalen Hurts, Donovan McNabb said he still has a shoulder injury? Did you hear Donovan McNabb say that? Donovan McNabb recently said that he's not even 100%. He's like 70, 80%. But a shoulder injury. I thought that was weird. I was like, really?
Well, I said Brock Purdy's never lost a start. He's never lost a game he started and finished in his NFL career.
And just look at his stats and his passer rating. Like he's playing like in one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I'm not saying that he is.
He's a winner, and that's why that Week 5 matchup. By the way, that's the Sunday after the Longhorns play Oklahoma in Dallas. What a weekend that stands up to be in a few weeks. Texas OU at the Cotton Bowl, and then the Cowboys in San Francisco. But the chess match and the matchup there is all that weaponry for Kyle Shanahan, your buddy, right? One of your college teammate and great friend.
Yeah, and by the way,
All
that's why we talk a lot of 49ers. People are like, why are you talking 49ers? He is the only head coach in the NFL that's a lifetime Longhorn. So
Yes.
they'll be like, why are you talking 49ers? Well, he's a lifetime Longhorn. What do you mean? We talk about Bijan and talk about all the guys who played in the NFL that are lifetime Longhorns.
And they're the Cowboys. They're the kryptonite for the Cowboys
Yes,
right now.
that is
Come
exactly.
January.
That is, yeah.
So you're trying to, and that matchup will be, it's a regular season game. It won't matter again until January if they meet again. But to see the chess match between Shano and his weaponry and Christian McCaffrey and Debo and Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and Purdy versus the defensive weaponry of Dan Quinn and the Cowboys.
That's going to be fun.
Oh, man. Those are the kind of games you make appointments for.
Yeah, that is I'm going to tell you, that's going to be appointment listening for everybody, October 9th. I've been talking in the office. We're trying to get the ability to take some phone calls on the show. It's just me in the room, so it's somewhat difficult to take phone calls because it's hard to screen them. But we're working on a way for you guys to be able to call in because we want you to talk on the text line. We want to have phone calls. We want to get as listeners involved as we can here on the Sports Complex. But October 9th, circle it on your calendar. Texas OU, Dallas Cowboys versus San Francisco 49ers. It's going to be a hell of a week. It's going to be a hell of a weekend. And that Monday, people are going to be celebrating, or are they going to be jumping? One or the other. Stand on the ledge or celebrating. Let's pump the brakes on the text line. No, let's pump the brakes. All gas, no brakes. Until the brakes hit. Until we suddenly hit a brick wall. Until then, all gas, no brakes. We got to take one more break. We come up. We'll come wrap the show up here on the Sports Complex on the Horn 1019 AM 1260, the Horn app, and hornfm.com. with you guys on it. So I appreciate everybody texting in today, enjoying the show. We will be back tomorrow. Full show tomorrow, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. We hope you join us again. Then we'll talk much more about Texas and Baylor, getting us ready for the weekend, getting ready for the big Thursday night game. Saquon Barkley's out. I don't know how much San Francisco seems like they're going to run away with that one, but we'll get you ready for it. We'll get you ready for the weekend. All of that happening, and we'll be back for another show Friday. Can't wait. Good week with you guys. So everybody out there, be kind, be safe, keep your underwear clean. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on the Sports Complex on the Horn.